At this time, would the sergeants in charge of recording please start their recording?
Recording to the computer started.
Thank you.
Cloud recording good.
Thank you. And will Sergeant Hope take it away with the opening? Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Committee on Higher Education, joint with the Committee on Mental Health, Disability, and Addiction. At this time, would all panelists please turn on your videos? I repeat, at this time, will all panelists please turn on your videos? Thank you. In order to minimize disruption, please place all electronic devices to vibrate or silent mode. If you wish to submit testimonies, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. I repeat, testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you for your kind cooperation. Chair, we are ready to begin.
Which chair is starting first? Is it Inez? Is it I?
I'm not sure, but she's having, Chair, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. I've been having so many technical difficulties that I'm going to wing it to make sure that I'm following the format that we're using for the virtual. But for my opening statement, is that what I should be doing next? I'm going to ask my counsel to help direct me because I don't have the run of show.
Yes, council member, you can begin your opening statement.
Thank you so much. Good morning and welcome to today's oversight hearing on mental health services for students at the City University of New York. I'm Councilmember Inez Barron, Chair of the Committee on Higher Education and a proud CUNY alum. Thank you, Councilmember Diana Ayala, Chair of the Committee on Mental Health, Disabilities, and Addiction for joining us to hold this very important hearing. I want to start by noting that countries that celebrate Black History Month outside of North America do so this month in October. The fact that they celebrate in a month with 31 days as opposed to 28 serves as a further acknowledgement of the tremendous impact Black and Brown people have had on the world and across the nations, across the oceans. It has been several months since we celebrated Black History Month in this country, but the weight of our historic struggle to survive as Black and Brown people in America has resonated loudly in those months. Today's topic is but one reminder of that. Historically speaking, Blacks have largely been excluded from America's healthcare system, first as patients and then as professionals. But there is a little known era in which Black men and women were systematically recruited for racist medical experiments that were largely conducted to further the health and well-being of white Americans. Take, for example, our so-called father of gynecology, Dr. Marion Sims, who was lauded for surgical and other medical procedures that today enhance the vaginal and reproductive health of women worldwide. Yet, he developed these procedures by dissecting the genitals of enslaved Black girls and women without their consent, and oftentimes without anesthesia. And more recently, we have seen the 40-year-long Tuskegee experiment that preyed upon impoverished Black men with the fake promise of medical treatment, but left many to die, suffer blindness, and infect others with untreated syphilis disease through the early 1970s. Despite some overall advances in healthcare equity since those days of human lab rat experimentation, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Offices of Minority Health has found that healthcare disparities, particularly among mental health services, continue to persist among U.S. citizens of color. Racial and minority groups in the U.S. are less likely to access mental health services due to a lack of insurance and indeed mistrust of the mental health system. Black people, for example, were 20% more likely to experience mental health problems than the general population due to economic, racist, and other societal circumstances, while only 25% sought mental health care as compared to 40% of white people. The same is true for our nation's colleges and universities, where, according to the American College Health Association, mental health needs are almost directly related to measures of academic success. A 2015 survey found that students who reported psychological distress also reported receiving lower grades on exams, important projects, and courses, receiving an incomplete or dropping courses altogether, or experiencing a significant disruption in their coursework. Yet, while higher education is a transition for all students, the challenge is often greater for students of color, especially those from low-income families and those who are the first in their families to attend college. Not only do these students deal with everyday stresses unfamiliar to their more privileged classmates, including poverty, increased violence, and lack of hope that resonate in some low-income communities, but they are also in a new and unfamiliar setting without guidance. Moreover, this feeling of alienation a Black or brown college student might feel is exacerbated by discrimination and racism, large and small, conscious or unconscious. Collectively, these stresses, which often crop up at an age when mental illness is known to develop at a higher rate, are a perfect storm for the developments of anxiety disorder, depression, and other mental illnesses. That is, stress is a strong contributing factor, a predictor of the onset of those very illnesses. A 2018 study from the Journal of Adolescent Health found that a large variation in service utilization across race and ethnicity. Overall, students of color are significantly less likely to seek treatment than white students. Why is that? What is it about our healthcare system, mental health in particular, that feeds this disparity? According to a 2016 student experience survey at CUNY, which is celebrated for its racial diversity, 5% of community college students respondents and 9% of senior college respondents were dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with student health services, which work out to a total of 8% of the university as a whole as dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. Though that may seem like a relatively low percentage of overall dissatisfaction, 39% of community college respondents and 46% of senior college student respondents were neutral with regard to student health services at their school, which works out to a total of 43% of the university as a whole, which indicates that these students may not have sought on-campus student health services. There are several reasons why a student may not have access campus student health or mental health services, but it is one issue that the University Student Senate has repeatedly brought up. In the past, we have heard testimony, In the past, we have heard testimony about long wait lists and short-term individual counseling, as well as a general lack of knowledge about the existence of such a resource. Before the pandemic, many CUNY students struggled with housing and food insecurity and balancing the demands of family, work if they're employed, and school. COVID-19 has only intensified these inequities, which negatively impact retention and academic success. Now, maybe more than ever, mental health services are crucial. Students may have lost jobs, family members, and friends. Students may have had to leave a safe haven at school where they could be themselves or quarantine someplace where they may not feel safe. In addition to gaining a better understanding of the university's mental health resources for students, I am particularly interested in how CUNY is addressing what can be a growing need for such services. Moreover, I'm interested in learning how each school is working to address the stigma that certain students might have about mental health services, as well as how services are being tailored to meet student needs, like the Black Mental Health Matters support sessions, which are led by 2 Black psychologists at Baruch College. Let me close by saying that the cultural competency with which CUNY provides its mental health services is another important part of today's discussion. We know that there is an inherent mistrust of healthcare and mental health care in particular among people of color. Culturally competency, having a health care professional that can effectively care for those who have diverse cultures and racial backgrounds should be the paramount consideration in the delivery of mental health services at CUNY. Moreover, having mental health professionals who look like and share these diverse cultures and racial backgrounds is also important. We have lots of questions for you regarding these matters, but first, I want to acknowledge my colleagues who are present. I'll do that at my colleague because I can't see the screen right now. And in addition to the Mental Health, Disabilities, and Addiction Committee staff, I would like to thank my Chief of Staff, Joyce Simmons, my Director of Legislation and CUNY Liaison, Ms. M. Indigo Washington, Chloe Rivera, the committee's Senior Policy Analyst, Paul Senegal, Counsel to the Committee, and Michelle Peregrine, the committee's Finance Analyst. And now my colleague, Councilmember Diana Ayala, will deliver her opening remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair Barron. Good morning, everyone. I am Councilmember Diana Ayala, Chair of the Committee on Mental Health, Disabilities, and Addiction. First, I want to thank Councilmember Chair Barron for co-chairing today's hearing, and I would also like to thank and acknowledge all of my fellow committee members who are here today with us at this remote hearing. Welcome, Council Members Cabrera, Borelli, Ampry, Samuels, and I will do you the favor, Inez, because I know you can't see your members. Council Members Rodriguez and myself, who sit on the Higher Education Committee, are also here. I think that it's safe to say that no one who is experiencing COVID-19 pandemic has escaped some feeling of emotional anxiety brought on by the public health crisis. The uncertainties associated with the fear of contracting coronavirus have been compounded by the ripple effects of the pandemic on daily life. For young college-age students, the pandemic has interrupted the critical period of human development known as emerging adulthood, which is typically a time of physical and emotional transitioning. Emerging adulthood is usually associated with peak physical health and well-being, but it is also a time of life when mental health disorders may emerge. In fact, with the exception of dementia, emerging adults experience more of every diagnosed mental health disorder than any older age group. And the rates of serious mental illness can double of that of adults over the age of 25. In 2019, the Journal of the American Medical Association reported that young adult suicides in the US had reached its highest level in 2 decades. And next to unintended motor vehicle accidents, a 47% increase in suicide and homicides were a leading cause of death among people aged 15 to 24 years of age. Additionally, the Center for Disease Control has reported that COVID-19 has disproportionately impacted the mental health and well-being of young adults at a time when many of the adults that they would normally reach out to for guidance and reassurance, such as parents, teachers, and mentors, are also facing their own uncertainties and anxieties. CUNY students have cited the effects of COVID stressors to include disruption of degree programs, difficulties with virtual learning, financial uncertainties, as well as the worries about possible infection among friends, family, teachers, and fellow students. Notably, barriers to accessing mental health and substance use disorder services have been compounded by the pandemic, and a recent study found that 13.3% of adults found new or increased substance use to be an effective coping tool for increased stress and anxiety brought on by the effects of the COVID-19 crisis. At today's hearing, the committee looks forward to hearing from representatives from CUNY and other education advocates about programs and initiatives that are being utilized to address these rising mental health challenges among CUNY students. I want to thank the representatives from CUNY who are here today and look forward to hearing about their commitment to ensuring that quality mental health services are available for CUNY students, for all CUNY students. I also look forward to hearing about what is being done to ensure that these services are delivered when and where they are needed, and the role that the City Council can play in supporting those efforts. I also want to thank my colleagues as well as my committee staff Senior Counsel Sarah List, Legislative Policy Analyst Chrissy Dwyer, Finance Analyst Lauren Hunt, my Deputy Chief of Staff Michelle Cruz, and Chief of Staff Jose Rodriguez for making this hearing possible. Thank you all, and I look forward to a great discussion. I now turn it back to Committee Counsel.
Thank you, Chair Ayala. Thank you, Chair Barron. My name is Paul Senegal, and I'm counsel to the Committee on Higher Education here at the New York City Council. I will be moderating today's hearing and calling panelists to testify. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that you will be on mute until I call on you to testify. After you are called on, you will be unmuted by the host. Please listen for your name. I will periodically announce who the next panelist will be. Council members' questions will be limited to 5 minutes. Council members, please note that this includes both your question and the witness's answer. Please also note that we will allow a second round of questions at today's hearing. These will be limited to 2 minutes, again, including both question and answer. For public testimony, I will call up individuals in panels. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the raise hand function in Zoom. You will be called on after everyone on that panel has completed their testimony. For public panelists, once I call your name, a member of our staff will unmute you, and the Sergeant at Arms will give you the go-ahead to begin speaking after setting a timer. All public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. After I call your name, please wait a brief moment for the Sergeant at Arms to announce that you may begin before starting your testimony. So before we commence the administration's testimony, we will first hear from a panel of students. Those students in order of speaking will be Giovanni Piquant, President, CUNY University Senate, Amber Rivero, Vice Chair, Senior Colleges, University Student Senate, Neha Saida from Brooklyn College, and Anna Compton from Hunter College. We will now hear from Giovanni Piquant.
Starting time.
Thank you so much. Good morning to members of the New York City Council and all others present here today. My name is Giovanni Piquant, and I serve as the chairperson of University Student Senate and student trustee at CUNY. I would also like to thank Chair Barron for holding this oversight hearing regarding mental health services at the City University of New York. The COVID-19 pandemic has drastically shifted the lives for our CUNY students, and many are facing great challenges during the fall 2020 semester. Many students rely on the campus life and resources to get through their everyday lives, whether it may be the library, food pantry, or counseling services and more. The constant disinvestment at CUNY has had an immediate impact on everyday students receiving the short end of the stick. This did not begin when the COVID-19 pandemic began, but this has been years of systemic disinvestment. We've noticed firsthand during the past semester, the leadership of New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio make attempts to remove ASAP and cut funding for CUNY in various aspects. Disinvestment in higher education should never be an option, but investment should be the way we should be leaning towards. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic and campuses not being accessible to students has had great impact mentally, physically, and socially for our students. Virtual learning has caused us to spend an increased amount in front of the computer screens and has offered fewer opportunities for less human interactions. Students have reported waiting 6 weeks to hear back from their counseling services and strenuous obstacles just to receive the investment they deserve. Many students have expressed the effect on this pandemic having a great impact on their mental health. Yesterday, a student reached out to me regarding a concern that they have, and they're also a student with disability. And I quote, they say, "I feel as a student with disability, I understand that funding is no longer there from what I heard, but why can't there be some collaboration with disabilities tutoring and their writing center? And I don't think that's being explored, which also is making me more frustrated and stressed." The constant hiccups that students are experiencing with this semester has not only propelled them to be stressed this semester, but also has having them decrease their morale as a student at the City University of New York. It is extremely important for us to understand that these calamities within the pandemic has not only impacted us socially, but also the interactions that we have and our consistency and our perseverance throughout our collegiate career. It is no secret or news that resources have been limited at CUNY, and it is important to know that CUNY having limited services being offered to students calls for more of a focused intention behind communication and visibility of the services that are already there. Local campuses and CUNY should be having a holistic approach to centralized marketing and communication to our students, to hear from students themselves and include them in the conversations of how we will disseminate these resources and communicate with students. Based on a report from Inside Higher Ed, from a survey that was conducted to see the impact of COVID-19 on college students, it reported that students suggested that their well-being has been devastated by the pandemic's social and economic consequences and the uncertainty of their
Time
college
expired.
education and post-college career. Thank you.
Giovanni, were you finished? Giovanni, were you finished?
Yes.
Okay.
And I definitely would not be remiss if I didn't mention what is going on socially in our society here today. We
Okay.
see the injustices of what is occurring in our communities and everyday lives. Students are on the front lines fighting for justice and equality for our everyday people. And I really want to thank Councilmember Barron for always speaking truth to exactly what situations are and understanding we are a university that is in a unique situation. The
Thank you.
majority of the students that we serve are students of color. It is important that there's intention being brought to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanni. The next panelist will be Amber Rivero.
Starting time.
Good morning. I'd like to start by thanking Chair Inez Barron and the Higher Education Committee, as well as Chair Ayala and the Mental Health, Disabilities, and Addiction Committee for the opportunity to submit this testimony amidst the global pandemic we are enduring. I wish you and your families good health during this time. My name is Amber Rivero. I'm a senior at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and I also serve in the duality of Vice Chair for Senior Colleges at University Student Senate, as well as President of our student government. It should be no surprise to anyone today that mental health is one of the most urgent and reoccurring topics for student leaders to assist with this year at CUNY. Our students are experiencing higher education virtually, a lack of social contact, the loss of parents and loved ones to COVID, racial injustice being heightened, economic depression, and much more. In a student government-led survey this summer at John Jay, 41% of the 600 students who participated said that mental health was one of the most urgent challenges that they're facing in a virtual CUNY environment. In my individual experience as a student who has attended 2 senior colleges, when seeking mental health services in 2018, I was advised I could only see a counselor 6 times for the semester and not ever exceed that. In 2019, at a different institution, I was advised I could only be accommodated for an emergency drop-in appointment. I did take that appointment, and after the hour session with the counselor, I was informed that there was a 6-month wait for regular therapy or mental health services, and provided a list of outside mental health resources to contact on my own without a referral. Students have shared across CUNY the high volume of students in need that attribute to long wait lists. Another common concern for our minority students is the white dominance in these centers at some colleges. Students feel less inclined to receive counseling when there's lacking diversity in the centers. Since COVID, we have received many reports from students about mental health services becoming more inaccessible, and even received students reaching out about severe depression and suicidal ideations. But when we as student leaders tried to offer the counseling center as a resource, often students wanted nothing to do with the center or were hesitant due to the process. Many times students complain the policies and environment can prove to be discouraging and even re-traumatizing for students that are in dire need. I'd like to also submit a short testimony of a student that is one of our constituents named Sandesh Lachman, who has also attended 2 CUNY senior colleges and addressed mental health resources as a cross-CUNY issue. Mental health resources at CUNY are inaccessible and inefficient. I've met trauma-incompetent practitioners. I've been deselected for an appointment after waiting months because of a correspondence issue. Mental health providers are managing a lot. Their schedules are booked, so I don't blame the clinicians. I blame the system. Some clients need psychiatric and psychological care, but they're only treated by a counselor. Those are 3 very drastically distinguished disciplines. CUNY needs to create an effective mental health team, which includes all 3 and is more holistic. CUNY is doing far below the bare minimum. I don't even think they value their clinicians' time. The clinicians are overwhelmed, untrained, and underpaid. I passionately believe our constituents'
Time
testimony
expired.
Thank you.
You can finish your statement.
Thank you, Chair Barron.
Yes.
I passionately believe our constituents' testimony is a fair assessment of the issues students are faced with. it would be extremely revealing to see what qualitative responses would yield if CUNY did a survey of mental health needs, resources, and experiences that students have experienced just this year alone. We are in a global pandemic. Attending university in quarantine is enough to spark a need for mental health support, but now we're faced with even more adversities. The disproportionate rate of counselors to students at each campus exacerbates our anxieties and contributes to another layer of obstacles to overcome while pursuing a higher education degree and just fighting to survive in 2020. I ask that the Committee on Higher Education, jointly with the Committee on Mental Health, Disabilities, and Addiction, consider the testimony shared today and hold CUNY accountable to a more purposeful, intentional, and holistic mental health approach to provide the services we deserve as students. I also request that any extra funding that is needed to efficiently expand and support the existing mental health centers be provided to the colleges, as CUNY students are constituents of New York City and deserve the right to adequate mental health resources at their respective campuses free of cost. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We will now hear from Nea Saida.
Starting time.
Good morning. My name is Neha Sayeda, and I'm a junior at Brooklyn College. I'm also a Policy and Advocacy Fellow with Young Invincibles. I want to thank the New York City Council for the opportunity to testify. I'm here before you to share the perspective of college students who are challenged to persist through higher education while also juggling the burden of mental health. A 2018 survey from Healthy CUNY found that more than 40,000 CUNY undergrads report symptoms of depression, while nearly 50,000 report symptoms of anxiety disorders. These numbers were staggering even before we were in the midst of a global pandemic, and both research and students themselves suggest that COVID-19 will increase mental health needs on college campuses. As a Brooklyn College student, I've had numerous encounters with students who are struggling to keep up their grades while also managing their anxiety and depression. They would like to seek mental health counseling. However, accessing these services has proven challenging. I've also learned that students are often unaware of mental health services and how to access them because of the lack of communication, marketing, and outreach. Even when the students do seek these resources, they're often greeted with unbelievably long waits because most CUNY campuses are severely understaffed with mental health professionals. And when students are able to meet with mental health counselors, they're met with restricted time appointments where everything feels rushed. We recommend the following changes to increase on-campus mental health services. At both central and campus levels, CUNY must increase its communication and outreach of available mental health services and how to access them. The information should not only be clearly visible on its website, but also be shared with students via text and social media. In addition, message should be coupled with information about how to access basic needs such as food pantries and single stops, because in most cases, the mental health issues are not isolated. We need to hire more mental health counselors across all CUNY campuses to reduce long wait lists. Currently, the ratio of mental health counselors to students across New York State colleges and universities is 1 to 2,400. The recommended ratio by International Accreditation of Counseling Services is 1 to 1,000. Finally, I would encourage the CUNY and the City Council to examine the new initiative that SUNY recently launched with Thriving Campus, an outsourced provider to help meet the growing demand of mental health servicing. Knowing that the capacity is limited, CUNY should consider similar partnerships. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. We will now hear from Anna Compton.
Starting time.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Anna Compton. I'm a senior at Hunter College. Thank you to the New York City Council for the opportunity to testify. As a transfer student with a documented IEP and a history of depression and anxiety, I believe improved and stable mental health resources are needed. Transferring from a SUNY community college to a four-year CUNY school was extremely hard. I felt extremely anxious every single day of my first semester at Hunter. Luckily, I had the stability of the accessibility office and was able to speak with a disability counselor assigned to me who helped me in navigating a new school. However, I was not so lucky when trying to access a mental health counselor at Hunter. When I called to schedule an intake appointment, the waitlist was 4 to 6 weeks. Once I finally got into the counseling office, I tried to limit what I shared because friends at Hunter warned me that if you share too much, you will be sent off campus. And while I was lucky enough to have insurance, I knew I could not afford the weekly copays to see someone off campus. I was referred off campus and was given a list of therapists. It took me 8 months to find a therapist through these references. 8 months. The therapist they referred me to had 6 to 8 week wait list for an intake appointment, which did not guarantee sessions, would take over an hour of transit each way, did not take my insurance entirely, had limited hours, or never even called me back. I went back to the counseling services about 3 more times asking for new references, only to get the same references or others that would, again, not call me back. When the pandemic hit in March, I was at a point of desperation. Distance learning as a student with a learning disability was my biggest nightmare, and I just wanted someone to listen. Even when I asked to meet my on-campus counselor for short-term sessions, she referred me off campus. It was in August that I got my first call back and was desperate to start sessions, but the therapist made me uncomfortable and I had to stop seeing him. I went back to searching and finally got a call back from a place I had called exactly a year ago. They immediately scheduled me for an intake appointment, and I haven't heard back from them since. It's now October. Our wellness services are failing students. CUNY campuses need more mental health counselors. We need more counselors to work with students with disabilities, students who are food or housing insecure, students of color, and LGBTQ students. We needed this before the pandemic, and we certainly need it now. We need our New York leaders to care about supporting CUNY and SUNY students, from the governor to the city council to the board of trustees and campus presidents, and to invest in students' mental health. CUNY students are about to be hit with another tuition hike. Part of this is for our health and wellness fee. Why are students being charged more for a failing service? We need to look at how other colleges are addressing mental health and invest in options that work for all CUNY students. The money can be found and it needs to be prioritized for students' mental health. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just have a few questions. I'm going to start first with questions for Ms. Compton. And then after I ask my questions, I'll ask my co-chair, Chair Ayala, if she has questions of you as well. I'm particularly concerned, Ms. Compton, about the comments that you made in terms of transferring from a community college to a senior college, to Hunter, my alma mater. And was there any kind of transfer information that was sent from the community college to Hunter to put them on alert, so to speak, or to let them know that there might be some kind of continuity of services?
Well, when I was at the community college upstate in Utica, I was communicated by my advisor at the 2-year school that it would be an easy transition. And because I was going from a 2-year school to a 4-year school and it was only SUNY to CUNY, that all of my credits would transfer. And then once I got to Hunter, after they accepted me, it wasn't until I had started the semester that I found out that I was losing an entire semester of credits from transferring. And so that instantly impacted my mental health. And with that, I have to take an extra semester next fall for my senior year, which as a TAP recipient is affecting my graduation rate. But I wasn't fully aware, and it was not like properly communicated to me of services on campus. And when transferring, I didn't, sorry.
In particular, for the mental health services, was there any kind of information that was relayed? I was thinking it was CUNY to CUNY, but you're saying SUNY to CUNY.
Yeah, it was SUNY to CUNY.
Any mechanism that allows the sending school to send information to another institution about what's going on?
Well, I had, at my old college, I had accessed the counselor service, and it was much easier because it was a smaller school and because there were so many less students. But when transferring, it wasn't communicated, because I had actually taken a year off between transferring from the 2-year school and to Hunter. So I had been out of the system. I had been out of the public school system for a year. So once I transferred back, I was kind of just on my own.
Mhm.
And then I chose Hunter based on, you know, its reputation, and it is a great CUNY school. But when I transferred in, just like the normal issues that so many CUNY students have with speaking with an advisor, and it's, you know, like one advisor to 1,000 students, I had a really hard time finding resources. And then once my documentation was transferred over as the student, like as a student with an IEP, that was when I was told more about the resources on campus. But I don't think that if I had not had the IEP, I don't know if I would have found out about all of these services. And I think because I had that documentation, accessibility was like a big advocate for me in finding those resources, but I definitely don't think I would have known about that without that. So.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
you.
I wish you
Thank you.
well in your.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Councilmember Chair Ayala, you have questions? of-
Yeah, no, I wanted to say thank you all for your testimony. And I think the only question that I have, I'm curious to know, for those of you that may have been offered services off-site, did anyone follow up with you to ensure that there was a connection, was made? Because oftentimes we find that a referral is made, but yet, you know, the person never makes it. Was there anyone that was tracking that information? Do you know?
I personally was in contact more so like on my end with my counselor at Hunter on campus. I had communicated multiple times what references she had given me weren't working, but it didn't really seem that she was taking those exact therapists into consideration, because when she would refer me to new therapists, she would give me the same names, but on her end, she didn't reach out to me to follow up on references unless I was emailing her saying, hey, this didn't work out. It's been 2 months and like, I'm not finding a therapist off campus. So on her end, the counselor I worked with at Hunter, she wasn't speaking with me to follow up on references to make sure I at least had a connection outside of Hunter, unless I was initiating the conversation.
Now, the counselor, I'm sorry if I missed this, the counselor that you're referring to, is that a guidance counselor kind of?
No, like one of the—
Is that a mental health counselor?
No, for mental health counseling at Hunter. Okay. So yeah, so the references she had given me, unless I would directly email her stating that they weren't working or I wasn't hearing back from them. But there was a point where I was just kind of done with even trying to find a therapist, and I didn't hear from her until I contacted her in March when COVID occurred, but it was never her reaching out to me first to like confirm that I had any connections.
Was a referral to maybe a program like Well NYC ever made? Sorry, Anna. I think Anna, can Anna be unmuted?
Yeah, sorry, I got muted again. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So a more immediate service would, sometimes that you would get a referral to call maybe Well NYC so that you have someone that you can speak to immediately. Was that type of referral ever made?
No, I never got that reference. So I did outside research to find a therapist on my own, but I never got that contact, which would have been helpful, but.
Okay, thank you so much. This is really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to call on council members for questions. If any of you would like to ask questions of this panel, please use the Zoom raise hand function. Okay, seeing no questions, we will move on to the administration. So I will now call on the following members of the administration to testify. First, Denise Maybank, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Enrollment Manager. Gerard Bryant, Director of Counseling at John Jay College and Chair of the Counseling Center Directors Council at CUNY. And attending to answer questions following the testimony of Ms. Maybank and Mr. Bryant will be Ryan Kemmeyer, the University Director of Mental Health and Wellness. I will deliver the oath to all three of you. and after, I will call upon each of you individually to respond. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Ms. Maybank?
Yes.
Mr. Bryant?
I do.
And Mr. Kameyer?
Yes, I do.
You may begin your testimony when ready.
Good morning, Chairperson Barron, Chairperson Ayala, and members of the committees. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony before you on this critical issue of mental health. As I listen to the students, I have adjusted my presentation because that is what is critical. And I want to make sure that I respond to what it is that they have indicated.
Right.
But just so that you know, my name is Denise Maybank, and I am honored to be the recently appointed Interim Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Enrollment Management for the City University of New York. I am a proud first-generation alum of the illustrious Brooklyn College, and I had the benefit of education and service at a variety of our nation's institutions. So I've had the experience of working with students and understanding their needs in a variety of contexts. I also hold a doctoral degree in counseling psychology. You have my full testimony, fortunately, because I will be diverting from it this morning. As you heard, I'm accompanied by Ryan Kameyer, who will be in a better position to answer questions, as I am 14 days into my tenure at the institution, but glad to be here today. So as I listened to Giovanni, Amber, Anna, and Naiha, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I didn't hear it, so I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly. As I listened to the things that they raised and the concerns that they shared, I had to adjust what I was saying because that is the issue. We have to be responsive to our students. We have to be able to pay attention to what it is that is happening in the midst of COVID, but also in the general experience of our students. A part of my testimony included drawing attention to the fact that you, Chairperson Barron, as a graduate of Hunter, and you, Chairperson Ayala, as a graduate of Bronx Community College, along with me as a graduate of Brooklyn College, we know the usual circumstances that result in trying to navigate the city and being a student at CUNY. But the students today are confronted with a pandemic, something we've never experienced that is impacting the world and confounding the experiences that they are having on the campuses. And so we have to be responsive to these things. What I want you to know is that there's the full-time equivalent of 108 individuals providing service at our counseling centers so that students can receive what services we can provide. No, we're not going to be able to meet the full need. Not everyone's going to be able to have one-on-one counseling services, but we do have to step into the space to make sure students see those who are most able to respond to them and experience counseling and have counseling experiences that are consistent with their cultural context, understanding, and being. And these are things to which CUNY is paying attention. I want to bring to your attention that recently a significant funding has been allocated to mental health and wellness services across CUNY via the CARES Act resources. With an investment of $5 million, we are providing additional shared services across the university to support mental health during this difficult period. For 24-hour support and accessibility, a crisis texting service will be instituted, allowing trained crisis counselors to interact with students on text messaging to assure safety, connection to services, and support. And that may help some, but it won't be sufficient for all. Clinical staff members will engage in new professional development activities leading to board certification in telemental health to assure that best practices are employed in providing virtual services to students, a new space and territory for us all. An online asynchronous psychotherapy service for out-of-state and international students will be made available as well. As those students who are unable to access telehealth services due to licensing laws. This service will also allow students who are unable to access those services through campus because of technological limitations to have access to some support. Specifically targeting faculty and staff has been initiated with 2 online courses focused on grief and bereavement, which is an increasing demand for service, and on self-care and resilience. Supporting this will be additional professional development opportunities, preparing faculty and staff to identify students facing mental health concerns and to respond to them in an appropriate and compassionate manner. As I participated in the University Student Senate meeting on Sunday, I heard our students say that they are concerned about the economic impact as well as the mental health impact they are experiencing right now. So with that recent understanding and listening to 4 of the most amazing students anywhere this morning, I commit to you as a new member of the administration that I will be paying attention, that I will attend to the things that you have indicated are problematic in terms of the long waits, the referrals out and not understanding what it is that you need to do and how you need to do it. So that's a commitment that I'm making to you. My email address is my first name, Denise.Maybank@cuny.edu. I got to remember it. Feel free to email me. I'm glad to respond to you and to do whatever I can to support you, not only from a position of being an administrator, but understanding the issues you presented as a psychologist. So I offer you that. And in closing, because I know my time is almost up and I'm about to hear time, let me just offer that the expansion of services and funding are important and critical. The funds that we have identified certainly fill our short-term need for particular types of services that can be covered by one-time resources. Still, there continues to be great need that is one reason CUNY continues to seek ask for the federal government to provide additional assistance to the state, as well as to higher education institutions across the state. CUNY will continue to advocate for additional resources to augment and expand the essential mental health services that our students require. Chairpersons Barron and Ayala, I thank you for this opportunity. I thank you for the opportunity to hear what I heard on day 14, so that I can commit all the days going forward to making sure that we are responsive to our students, to their needs, to understanding mental health issues, food insecurity, housing instability, the intersection of all of those things to make sure that the destiny of these young people is fulfilled and the future of our city is secure. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll next hear from Mr. Bryant.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairpersons Barron and Ayala, members of the committees on higher education, mental health, disabilities, and addiction. And it's good to hear from our CUNY students who testified earlier. And Amber, it's great to see you from representing John Jay. I want to thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony before you on the critical matter of mental health services for students at the City University of New York. And my testimony will focus on services at John Jay College for Criminal Justice. My name is Dr. Gerard Bryant, and I have the honor of serving as Director of Counseling at John Jay College of Criminal Justice of the City of New York. In addition, I am the chair of the CUNY Counseling Center's Director Counsel and Adjunct Assistant Professor in the Psychology Department at John Jay College. I believe my extensive experience as an administrator and psychologist, along with an outstanding and diverse clinical staff, allows us to provide timely, effective, and a vast array of mental health services to our unique and resilient student population. My goal today is to provide the committee with a comprehensive picture of mental health services at John Jay College. And I, like Vice Chancellor Maybank, I will defer or divert a little bit from my testimony that I submitted. I had submitted some factoids about John Jay, enumerated many of those. Clearly, the highlights of this college has been laser focused on student success, and we realized several achievements under President Carol Mason's leadership. And again, those are enumerated and listed in the testimony I provided. I do want to skip down and just get to the heart of the matter. And, you've already heard that an essential part of our mission is for the retention and graduation of our students, and is the provision of services necessary to accomplish the academic goals of each student enrolled in CUNY. To this end, the Counseling Services Center across CUNY plays an integral role in helping students, and at John Jay, their students, reach the finish line, which is in line with President Mason's emphasis on student success. The Counseling Services Center provides free and confidential psychological and counseling support services to meet the mental health and developmental needs of the John Jay College students. Counseling services are provided by our diverse group of full or part-time doctoral and master's level mental health staff services and by graduate externs or interns under the supervision of licensed clinicians. Currently, we have 7 full-time and 5 part-time clinicians on staff. The demographic breakdown of staff is as follows. We have 8 females, 4 males, 4 African Americans, 2 Hispanic, 2 Asians, and 4 white. In addition, 2 of our staff are fully bilingual in Spanish and English. We also have 11 trainees from graduate programs across New York City and New Jersey. And I can tell you that this is an extremely diverse group. We have 9 females, 2 males, and of the 11, all of them are minorities. And their languages that they speak include, besides English, Spanish, Korean, Greek, Hungarian, Urdu, Hindu, and Punjabi. So you can see that's a pretty good representation of our CUNY population. The center is fully accredited, site in good standing with the standards of the International Association of Counseling Services. And as of March 2020, all of our services are offered remotely. This means we conduct counseling sessions via telephone or via video, which i.e. Zoom. We have many services, and I enumerated in the written testimony to include intake evaluations. By the way, they're provided by our licensed professionals and graduate trainees. So intake evaluations, crisis counseling, a consultation, individual counseling, group therapy, referral consultations, substance abuse evaluations, substance abuse counseling, confidential Title IX evaluation, medication assessment and management. And again, all of our college, John Jay College graduate and undergraduate students may access our services that I just enumerated. Currently, no John Jay student is ever turned away if they ask to speak to a counselor when contacting our staff or if they request an intake evaluation. Access to services is typically available within days to 1 week of initial contact. Currently, we do not have a wait list for any of our services. Not all John Jay students, however, are able to see regularly for ongoing individual counselor, as our center is not able to appropriately meet everyone's treatment needs. And by that, I mean folks, students who have a higher level of care and which may be more appropriate for a care provider in the community. Roughly less than 5% of our students are referred to outside community entities, as we try to work with as many students as possible who are appropriate for our clinical setting. Personal counseling for students right now is limited to a 12-week model with the option to extend treatment if needed. And I can tell you, just speaking off the script here, that we have many students who are way beyond the 12-week model. For example, if a student is connected to multiple services at John Jay, it makes sense to keep him or her in-house, or the nature of the clinical picture dictates longer intervention, the number of counseling center sessions can be lengthened. So basically, the 12-week model is by no means a hard and fast rule, but provides a parameter to ensure we see as many students as possible and to avoid a wait list for personal counseling services. Our services are advertised to students in a number of ways, including our website, social media, word of mouth, town hall meetings, frequent outreach to classes, professors, on-campus entities, too many to enumerate here, via email, via phone, or ways students can access our services. The cultural competency of our clinicians, as was mentioned earlier, is of utmost importance for the provision of our services to our student population. We make it a point to hire culturally diverse clinicians, and I think I made that point earlier. We also conduct multiple presentations on race and culture and graduate seminar in our staff meetings. Some examples include immigration issues at John Jay College, structural racism, reflections on culture and psychotherapy, racial identity development, religion, and personality testing, LGBTQ+ issues at John Jay, and a veterans awareness workshop. Examples of some of our innovative programs include virtual drop-in counseling, group counseling made available to students, which we started in the summer and we're continuing in the fall, and an update to our intake procedures in order to gather data comparable information that was obtained by a computer-generated self-administered questionnaire prior to COVID-19. Speaking of that, prior to the pandemic, the majority of the presenting problems we saw in our students were what were listed earlier: trauma, family conflict, academic trouble, anxiety, and depression. And there is no doubt that COVID-19 has offered many challenges to our students. A main difference we are now seeing are people dealing with the consequences of COVID-19 and its aftermath. For example, many students impacted by the death of a loved one due to COVID-19, which of course brings up grief and bereavement issues, difficulty adjusting to online classes, more significant financial stress due to loss of job or financial resources, and difficulty living with family along with the presenting referral problems we saw prior to March 2020. We have made a concerted effort to conduct research in as many forms as possible since we've moved to a remote counseling operation. And in terms of the workload, I offered a lot of stats and some stats in my testimony. And we've obviously seen, over the last 3 years, an extensive amount. From 3 years ago, over 6,000, actually 2 years ago, over 7,000, last year, over 5,000, almost 6,000 students, sessions that were attended, and almost 1,000 students. Before closing, I want to say that without these services, many of our students would not make it to the finish line. I know counseling center employees across CUNY and all of my staff members would agree that the greatest reward we experience is when we see a student who has used our services and has overcome insurmountable odds walk across that stage of commencement. And that is no small number of students. I'd like to thank the New York City Council for this opportunity to offer an overview of services we provide to our unique and resilient student population at John Jay College. And we are grateful for your continued commitment to the success of all students at CUNY. Along with my fellow CUNY directors of counseling, we appreciate the leadership of the committees in higher education and mental health, disabilities, and addiction, and we are thankful for the ongoing support of the council to our CUNY community.
Thank you to the panel for the testimony. We appreciate your coming and sharing the programs that you're offering. And we're so grateful that we did have the students go first and that you had the sensitivity to adjust your testimony to reflect what it is that the students presented. But it's like we were talking at two different worlds. based on what the students say they experience in reality and what CUNY is saying they're offering. So we've got to try, and I want to welcome Dr. Maybank and welcome to CUNY. And you are being tested in the fire. And I'm glad to hear you offer your contact so that students can have a direct outreach to you. But based on what the students have said and data that they've shared with us, there's the ratio at CUNY is 1 to 2,400, whereas the standard that's proposed is 1 to 1,000. Is that what your data also reflects? That there's basically one counselor for every 2,400 students? Can you hear me? Are you muted?
I was looking for the opportunity to unmute. So,
Okay.
So there are different standards that are set by different entities, and the IACS, which was the one that was referenced, is the International Accrediting and Counseling Services entity, and they have a ratio set at 1 to 1,500, whereas the Association of University and College Counseling Center Directors annual survey in 2019 set the ratio at 1 to 1,362. Yes, I understand that our situation is such that the services, the staffing is in a ratio of 1 to 2,595. And one of our campuses is in a situation where it is 1 to 6,009. And so agreed, that is not where we want to be. I don't know that we can easily get to the 1 to 1,500 number, but certainly we can't afford to be at 1 to 6,009 under any set of circumstances in order to meet the needs of our students. And so, yeah, additional resources are necessary. When we talk about the $5 million that we are investing, those investments are for things that we know we can do with one-time money. In order to meet the demands and the needs for additional staffing, we need ongoing resources. And that is why we have to make the appeal at all levels to try to get additional resources to make sure that we can hire ongoing services.
Well, I think it calls for a very targeted and very specific allocation of money. I think if CUNY is going to have people believe that they want to take actions and support students and provide them with the with the social, emotional, and counseling services that they need, it's got to be reflected in dedicating money for that purpose. In the Department of Education, it was an issue which the City Council raised very clearly. And the Department of Education responded by saying, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to make sure that those counselors are hired, trained, and reflective again of the needs of the students. And I think that short of that commitment and saying this is our goal, this is our objective, this is our timeline, that all the rest of it is just talk at the issue. The issue is going to take a dedicated allotment, it's going to take money, and it's going to take a program that addresses that. I understand that CUNY did have an announcement today. I haven't been able to access it. I'm technologically challenged here, that they are going to have some money that will be dedicated to that. But unless you're targeting specifically what it is that you're going to put into long-range, sustainable counseling services, I think it's just so much talk. Now, the students also talked about the fact that they don't know that the programs exist. They haven't been given an opportunity to access that information. It's not widely distributed to them. So what is it that CUNY plans on doing to make sure that there's greater outreach, there's greater communication, there's greater information that's shared with students?
I am going to defer to Ryan to respond to that. As I said, 14 days in.
Yes.
Venture too much of a guess. So Ryan, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. Just to start, my name is Ryan Kamier. I'm the University Director for Mental Health and Wellness. I want to thank both Chairs Barron and Ayala for the opportunity to provide answers to questions. I also want to thank Dr. Bryant for his testimony and Dr. Vice Chancellor Maybank for her testimony as well. I think she's a real champion and just what CUNY needs right now in terms of these services. So I'm very, very glad to have her. The question is about advertising and marketing and how we have our information out to our students. So their counseling services are advertised multiple ways across campuses, including virtual, digital, word of mouth. The information about the services, including the locations of all of our counseling centers, a list of mental health resources, access to shared services, and frequently asked questions are available at the CUNY mental health webpage, which I can provide to the committee, so you have the exact details. So linked to that page are all of the individual websites for counseling across CUNY campuses. And on each campus website, the CUNY campuses have hours of operation, how to access the services, specifically what services are available, because some students may have needs that the services are unable to accommodate, and the location on campus. The websites have also been recently updated to include how to access services during the time of distance learning. Most websites have not only something on the counseling website, but also on the website of the COVID resources. So each campus maintains their webpage independently, so they keep their services up to date there. We also have a robust social media presence. News and updates are available at Twitter, and I can again share the Twitter address with the council. And campuses also have their specific Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok accounts that advertise information about the counseling centers. Services are advertised on campus television screens, on information boards. Many campuses will have class presentations at the beginning of each semester. We provide information at student orientations and by email blasts as appropriate. Also, we're working on training faculty and staff, as Vice Chancellor Maybank spoke about, to engage with faculty and staff, as well as students who have connected with the mental health services to the community. So those are our overall methods of marketing and communication of our counseling services throughout the university.
Well, it appears that they're not effective, and it appears that we need to perhaps find add some other kinds of outreach that can be more effective in letting students know. Before I continue, I want to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilmember Van Bramer. We're glad that he's here. I have another question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the co-chair for this event, and then it'll go to members, because I have lots of questions, but I know that some of the students are going to be leaving soon, and I want to be able to have them share what their experiences have been, and to remind them that they can submit testimony, written testimony, and we will review their testimony as we review this hearing. So my last question before I turn it over to the co-chair is that students talked about waiting a long time to get a response, and that was before the pandemic. And now that we have the pandemic, and students are even feeling greater levels of stress, that there's a long wait list. And now I heard the presenter from John Jay, Mr. Bryant, said that they don't have a wait list. I thought that's what I heard him say. So how is it that some schools don't have a wait list and others have a wait list that is so long that students wait weeks and months before they get a response. And what happens for those critical, urgent situations where a student needs to talk to someone immediately?
Sure. Yes, I agree. There does appear to be, doesn't appear to be, there are certainly some discrepancies between certain schools and how the wait lists function. As you said, Dr. Bryant mentioned that John Jay does not have a wait list, and other students' experiences are different. I think that comes back a little bit to Vice Chancellor Maybank's comments about the staffing ratio, how the staffing can affect the wait times and the accounts for appointments. So I think that's something that as we work on our improving our staffing ratios and getting the services up to the point where they should be, we will be able to reduce or eliminate wait times at those campuses that do have them. In terms of the follow-up questions for emergency services, firstly, I will say that we have emergency service contacts that are distributed on campus. They are in the body of emails that are distributed, and all of the emails that are all of the communications that are distributed to students have some sort of emergency contact at many schools, including contacting not only counseling, but also public safety, with whom counseling works very closely when there are issues of emergencies. The urgent and emergent issues that may come up on campus, there are resources in place to be able to manage those when campuses are in operation, and there's also contingency plans for when they're not in operation. As part of the CARES Act funding, however, we're instituting a crisis texting service that will be available to all CUNY students so that they can send a text message in 24/7, 365 to be able to manage the crisis that they may be in. We also have NYC well advertised, as they offer texting, talk, and online services. So those are the emergency services that we have. But we also will acknowledge that despite the counseling directors being busy, no student will get turned away if they're in an emergency or urgent situation. Those take priority across the board.
I think that's an important point as well in terms of the stabilization of a student. And I think Dr. Bryant addressed that in terms of his comments about what was going on at John Jay. But that's true, I think, from just a practice model in terms of therapy and therapists and so forth. You don't leave a student who is in crisis to fend for themselves to find something. You have to stabilize and then figure out what's going on next. And as I understand it, that is a practice. So I don't know if Dr. Bryant, you wanted to hit that one again. But
thank you, Vice Chancellor. Yeah, just to reiterate that point that, to Chairperson Barron's comments, any student in crisis is going to be seen immediately. And even during this time of teletherapy and Zoom and the virtual world that we're living in, there are many avenues we get referrals. We still get referrals from professors whose students may be acting out in class or showing signs of acute, emotional distress right now. We have, all of our CUNY campuses have behavioral intervention teams, which is comprised of mental health personnel, as well as public safety, or dean of students, most of these committees are 5 to 10 people committees. So there are a lot of eyes on campus, even if we're in this virtual world. And these students get referred to us even in this time, and we will be immediately on it. I mean, I could draw on 5 examples that just happened in the last 10 days of students who appeared on the Zoom classroom. Professors thought something was just not right, or in something they submitted in writing for an assignment, and we were notified immediately. And we're on it. I mean, there's a lot of good communication that happens and I'm not just saying at John Jay, on our campuses when it comes to students that are in crisis.
Thank you. I've got lots more questions, but I do want to turn it over now to the co-chair, Councilmember Diana Ayala. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Barron. Mr. Bryant, you mentioned that there are currently 7 full-time and 5 part-time clinicians available. Did I get that correctly? And are these clinicians servicing all 25 campuses?
No, this is at John Jay.
Got you.
Mr. Kamir, Ryan has data for all of the CUNY campuses.
Mr. Kamir?
Sorry. Oh, I wasn't unmuted. Sorry about that. Yes, we currently have 108 full-time equivalents across the university to provide services. So that includes all of our full-time and part-time employees.
108 full-time, or is that 108 full and part-time?
I'm sorry, it's 108 full-time equivalents. So the actual person count includes that includes both is probably in the neighborhood of 120 to 120 persons.
So is there just because I'm sorry for my ignorance, I'm trying to understand how this works. So is there a counseling support center at each campus, or is there like a main?
Each campus has its own counseling center, with the exception of 2 of our colleges, which are shared models, so that the students at those 2 colleges can access a college counseling center at another college. But basically, there are 23 centers that serve 25 colleges.
And is the staffing ratio comparable through all campuses?
No, I would say it's not. I would say, as Vice Chancellor Maybank brought up, we have some fluctuations there, with the average being 1 to about 2,500. Some go as high as 1 to 6,000, and some have 2 counselors for 400 students. So it really is. There's a lot of variation in the way that it's been done by campus.
So does that translate into longer wait times? Because I heard from Mr. Bryant that at John Jay it does not, but throughout the other campuses, I mean, I'm assuming that if the ratio is 1 to 2,400, 2,500, that there has to be a wait list. I couldn't understand how there wouldn't be one.
I suspect that there may be wait lists at other campuses, and I don't have that information at my fingertips, but I can get that for you if you'd like it.
I would like. Could anyone tell me what the frequent, does CUNY solicit feedback from students when evaluating the efficiency of its campus mental health professionals?
There are multiple surveys that do that in different ways that we employ, including the student experience survey, which is every 2 years. There are some surveys with our colleagues at the School of Public Health that do a Healthy CUNY survey. So there are surveys that do happen in different areas of the university.
What is the response rate of the survey?
I don't have that information at my fingertips, again, because it's another department, but I will get that information to you directly.
Yeah, that's important, because we want to know that, the students understand that there is an opportunity to provide feedback, and they don't have to wait until we have a hearing, to share their experiences. And I think that every 2 years is just not frequently enough, right? When we're talking about something as seriously and as fragile as mental health services.
Chairperson Ayala, may I ask for clarification? So I heard the first part you asked about assessment of the professionals, but I'm hearing in your follow-up that you want to know about the assessment of services as well. Is that correct?
Yes, I was asking how frequently does CUNY solicit student feedback? So we were discussing that there's a survey that goes out every 2 years. So I wanted to know what the response rate was for the survey, because I want to be able to gauge whether or not students are actually understanding and participating in a process that allows them to dictate what that service looks like.
All right. Thank you for the clarification.
So understanding that there's limited capacity, and a shortage in existing resources, is CUNY maximizing its relationships with outside partners to ensure that students are connected to these services?
Yes. I was provided quite the list. So Ryan, I'm going to defer to you to give them all, but I now know about New York City Well, I think is one, Northridge something associated with hospitalization. So I'm going to be quiet and let the experts tell you what those connections are.
So we have several outside providers that we work directly with. We also, each campus has of course their own local community centers. So I won't go through all of the list because there are hundreds and we would be here all day, but I will just tell you about some of the major ones that we do partner with. NYC Well has become, since its institution a couple of years ago, has become a huge referral source for us. And as the student mentioned before, the advertising and follow through with that system, we need to work on that somewhat. So I am definitely taking that note from the student regarding NYC Well, because it can be difficult to negotiate the New York City mental health system, especially if someone hasn't done it before. We also use the New York State Office of Mental Health Provider Network. If students have health insurance coverage, we will help the students to work through their health insurance to connect to treatment providers. We routinely refer to large community-based organizations, hospital systems like Health and Hospitals, of course, independent providers, depending on proximity to students' homes, confidentiality concerns, and level of care required. To provide several examples, we have a partnership with Northwell Health, their behavioral health college partnership, which works specifically with college students who have inpatient behavioral health needs and can help them transfer after their inpatient needs to an outpatient provider. And we have worked with them for a number of years. In terms of our outpatient community partners, we've worked with Mount Sinai Adolescent Clinic, Beth Israel, the LGBT Community Center, the DOOR, Institute for Family Health, and the Jewish Board, just to name a few. So we work with a lot of different agencies because the needs of our students are so varied, and because, as was mentioned before, it can be difficult to establish treatment in the community.
And how do you ensure, like, is there a process to ensure that the student that was referred to outside services actually received those services? Because we heard from Anna earlier that she had to basically, come back and reach out to her counselor several times because the referrals were just not adequate. And there was no follow-up. It should have been the reverse way, right? So the counselor should have been, in constant communication with her to ensure that whatever services they referred her to were efficient. What is your process for ensuring that the connection is actually made?
Well, I will ask Dr. Bryan if you have any thoughts about that, since he works directly at a center, so he may be able to speak more clearly about that.
Thanks, Ryan. Chair Ayala, yeah, we have we've often, well, as I said, less than 5%, but in cases where we referred people out to outside agencies, I would like to say and think that our counselors have been very diligent in following up with the students and supervising clinicians. That has often been the case, where they literally handed off the person to the community site. Now we find out sometimes later that the student may not have, attended first one or two sessions and then stopped going. Now, of course, that's little we can do about that, but I can tell you that without doubt, we are there to make sure we've handed off to the outside or the community person. And it works both ways. We also get phone calls from inpatient psychiatric hospitals where students are returning from an inpatient stay, and then they're notifying us that the student is now coming back on campus. And we are attuned and making sure we're following up with those students who are really at highest risk, right? When they're coming back from maybe a suicide attempt or some serious psychological problem back on campus. So the communication works both ways. And one other thing I'll add, which we really haven't talked about, and I omitted it from my testimony, was in fact, we have pre-COVID, we had 2 part-time psychiatrists on our campus working 12 hours a week, okay, 60 hours a month. Because of COVID, they were pulled back into their, they could not do the moonlight hours, but we do have a nurse practitioner on our campus to help with our prescriptions and doing assessments for psychiatry. So, and those, by the way, those psychiatrists and nurse practitioners are well steeped in the community, and our 2 psychiatrists helped, and we've had them for as long as I've been there, 6 years, have helped us with referrals to the community. They were primarily responsible for a lot of the handoffs. They work with Mount Sinai. They know a lot of the references, the community resources that Ryan mentioned, and they were instrumental in helping us get a lot of help for students who needed higher level of care. But I'm not here to say, I can only speak from John Jay's experience. So, and I know a lot of my counterparts are sensitive to this, but there's also a piece where students are handed off sometimes, but just may not follow through.
Understood, but there has to be a process for gauging, how many students actually connect and how many don't. Because it seemed to me like, in the case of Anna, that she was desperately trying to get, services, and it was just a lot harder than it should have been, right? And we all understand the sensitivity of the timing in these circumstances, and so we want to make sure that if somebody's actually physically being proactive and trying to access services, that we're connecting them as quickly as possible. So that's concerning to me, because I understand that there's no such thing as a perfect system, but we have to be open to the idea of reevaluating those systems to ensure efficiency. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that one person that kind of falls through the cracks is one person too many, in my opinion. And so especially when we're talking about, mental health in a post-COVID world. Now, have you seen an increase in the number of students that are accessing services via telehealth now, seeing that is a new alternative to treatment?
Based on the data that I've collected over the past semester and over the past year, a very interesting thing has happened, actually. The amount of requests for services, for initial services, has stayed similar to previous years. However, the attendance at appointments has skyrocketed because we've virtually eliminated no-shows. So people are actually attending appointments and coming to them with significantly higher frequencies. Services are being offered at a higher level, especially with the addition of the groups that we've added at many campuses.
It's very convenient. So I wonder if that's something that, maybe you may be considering continuing beyond COVID, because I think that, it is really helpful, because if you're in class or if you're at work or you're at home, you don't, you eliminate travel time, you eliminate the inconvenience of having to be at a certain location at a certain time. So I think that, we've seen a lot of success with that. And I hope that is a learned lesson, and that we're able to continue to provide services in that way as well. I have just 2 more questions. So regarding the marketing, so you were pretty clear on the marketing approach, but I wonder, has that approach been changed somehow to ensure that the students that are now remote learners are accessing those are seeing that marketing material as frequently as they would have if they were walking through campus?
I will say that centrally we have made an effort, especially through social media, to more consistently communicate that things are available, that services are available in mental health and wellness, and that, here's the link to the counseling centers, because folks may not know that that things are open, obviously, unless they go online. We've also changed a lot of the language on our website that has information to reflect what is available and how it's available. And I know that on campuses they have done similar efforts to communicate that information.
Yeah, we've really upped the game in terms of social media. I thought we were pretty up to date. We were, but we're even doing more on Instagram and some of those platforms, advertising our services. If you go to the John Jay website, you can click on just coronavirus updates, and we're right there in terms of wellness center, available resource, things of that nature. Of course, like anything, more can be done, but I think we're seeing just doing a lot. That's really the only way we can do it right now is through social media.
No, absolutely. And last one final question. Can you tell us what supportive services are currently being offered to students with learning disabilities?
So I will just say that in terms of learning disabilities, that falls outside of the portfolio that I oversee, which is mental health and wellness. So I can I would defer to Vice Chancellor Maybank, but again, she is only 12 days, so I assume we will have to follow up with you with the services regarding disabilities and learning differences.
And we do have a unit that is responsible for that, and Dr. Chris Rosa is the person who would be able to.
You're fading out a little bit.
I'm sorry. Dr. Christopher Rosa is the person that would be best able to respond to that, and we will get that information to you, Chairperson.
I would appreciate that. I would appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll turn it back to Chair Barron.
Thank you, Councilmember Ayala. And at this time, we will have the council ask if there are members that have questions.
Correct. Are there any council members who have questions for this panel? If you do, please use the Zoom raise hand function. Seeing none, we'll turn the floor over to Chair Barron for more questions and closing remarks.
Yes, thank you. I do have questions, and I just wanted to defer to other members for them to be able to pose their questions. So just to request first, you did share the information of the staffing at John Jay, but we would like to have it for the CUNY system of the 108 persons that you talked about. If you could please give us a breakdown disaggregated by ethnicity, by language, by gender, and by LGBTQ. We would appreciate that. Thank you so much. And then in terms of the qualifications, for the staffing, can you just briefly share what those requirements are?
Sure. Thank you, and we will get back to you regarding the data from Human Resources. So we will certainly follow up with that. And I wanted to just comment to Chair Ayala. One thing that you brought up in your previous question is regarding the ongoing footprint of telemental health. And I just wanted to put that out there, that part of our thinking around the CARES funding spending is maintaining a telehealth footprint on campus, even post-COVID. So thank you I'm glad we're on the same page on that, because that's definitely been part of our thinking. So thank you. And in terms of the qualifications, all of the employees are licensed mental health providers in the areas of social work, psychology, creative arts therapy, or mental health counseling. As Dr. Bryant said, we also have nurse practitioners in psychiatry, psychiatrists. They're very few that employ those employees, but we do have them, so I did want to point that out. Full-time employees.
Excuse me, you said social workers, psychologists?
Creative arts therapy.
Uh-huh.
And mental health counseling.
Okay.
So all of the licensed disciplines for mental health counseling in New York, we represent all of them at CUNY. All of the full-time employees are required to have.
Just to interject, what
Sure.
if a student is being seen by a creative arts person, but there's a need for another type of deeper, perhaps, level of service? How does that work? Is a student locked into the person that they're assigned to initially, or can a referral be made for someone who has a deeper need or more intensive questions that are being not addressed?
There is always the opportunity to work with the counseling department, the director, to be able to switch therapists if there's a need that's not being addressed, or if there's another specialty, for example, that's discovered after assessment. So there is that need for flexibility in terms of who is assigned to that person.
Okay, thank you. But you were saying something. You can continue with what you were saying.
Thank you. Sorry. The employees in the counseling center must have at least 6 years of clinical experience, which is also embedded in our hiring documentation and the job description. And part-time employees maintain the same licensure and qualifications as our full-time employees.
Okay, and in terms of the evaluation, Chair Ayala sort of referred to it as well. What assessments do you maintain as the institution for the quality or the effectiveness of the services that these mental health professionals are delivering?
I would refer back to the assessment research that the School of Public Health does, as well as the university at the institutional level. And I will get back to you regarding the details of those assessments, because again, they live in departments that are outside of the department that I oversee, in terms of institutional research, and in terms of the School of Public Health's work on that.
And just to follow up in terms of the new CARES money that has been received and will be utilized, how will every student in CUNY know that this money is there and that they may have an opportunity to take advantage of it? How will every student, we're talking about the marketing and making sure how will every student in CUNY know? And during this age of this pandemic and social distancing, remote learning, how will every student know about this?
I know that there's an effort to make sure that there is public announcement of the $5 million investment, but I hear what you're asking about. Then how are we pushing it out in a specific way so that students are aware that there are new services or new opportunities for them to connect? And I think that is something that we need to build, unless Ryan or Gerard can offer something different. I certainly am hearing what you are asking, because you said every. And there is no equivocating on that. I heard every. Right. So Ryan or Gerard, do either of you have anything that you can offer in that regard?
I will say that as part of our efforts to institute new services is an importance, in our opinion, the importance of, and I'm hearing loud and clear, the importance of marketing to every student from everyone here. So as part of our thinking about how the new services are going to be rolled out over the next few weeks and months, will also be a marketing plan associated with each one to be sure that each student has access to that information, whether it's through email and social media, whether it's through communications in other ways. We will certainly work on that.
I think that's critical. I think it will show the need that may have been undetected previously, and then result hopefully in the shifting of finances to be able to get the numbers of mental health care workers that we need. And in terms of finances, what's a typical compensation for CUNY mental health professionals? You gave me several titles. And what's the compensation is it the same regardless of the title of a social worker, psychologist, creative arts? Is it the same?
The salaries are determined by each college's human resources office. So we personally at the university, I'm sorry, let me take that back. In my office, I personally don't have access to the methods by which human resources makes those decisions. So that's the range that is provided for a typical full-time employee in our counseling center ranges from from 80,000 to 133,000. And that's based on the higher education officer line. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Let me just take that back. The higher education officer line, which is what most directors are on at this moment, ranges from 80,000 to 133,000. And that's based on collective bargaining. And that's how each role is determined. Since human resources typically takes into account education as well as experience, there are some fluctuations between there. I will just add that full-time employees who are doing the counseling work in our centers are typically on the higher education associate line. And that salary range is 63,000 to 111,000.
Okay. And finally, before I ask my co-chair if she has additional questions as well, how important is it to you that there be some type of consideration for the cultural values of the healthcare providers, matching that to the students? How important do you think that is? And if you think it's important, what is being done to try to provide that opportunity for students to know and to say, I would feel more comfortable with a particular mental health care provider?
That's essential. Given the diversity of the CUNY student population, we would be remiss if we did not pay attention to the cultural competency of all of our therapists, clinicians, and those encountering students, for me, in any context. But I also believe that the training matters in that regard as well. So yes, we need to recruit for those competencies, but we also need to train to make sure that everyone understands. So I'm going to defer to my colleagues for more direct information, but it is essential. There's no question. There's no doubt, no equivocating on that. So.
Great. Thank you. Chair Ayala.
Can I just weigh in on that for a second? Just to reiterate some numbers I gave you before. Our graduate training class this year is 11. We have 11 students, and they come from various graduate training programs from around the greater New York tri-state area, pretty much, from psychology, mental health counseling, and social work. And as I mentioned, and I'll say it again, we have 11, and all of them are members of ethnic minority groups. It starts at training. We need to get them on board and on our campuses, because we are the pinnacle. We have the most diverse student population, I would guarantee, across the country. And as the Vice Chancellor just mentioned, I know Ryan is on board with this, we would be remiss if we did not pay attention to these cultural sensitivities. And to go back an earlier question about regarding if a student doesn't feel comfortable with a particular clinician, of course, we always have to take that in consideration. And as a director, I would certainly listen to what the student has to say. And I have in the past. Sometimes, we've come to an understanding, okay, maybe this is not a good fit. We'll have to find someone else for you to work with. So we have to be flexible and attuned to our students' needs as it relates to many different issues, gender, cultural, whatever.
Thank you. Chair Ayala.
I have no further questions. Thank you. Thank you to the panelists, though. This is great.
Thank you so much. We do have additional questions, but we'll put them in writing. We do want to thank you for your time. You've been very patient and responsive to our questions, and we do appreciate that. I do have another question. If a student does not have mental health, does not have health insurance and has a need for services beyond the limited number of sessions that CUNY provides, what happens in that instance? Because my understanding is that a student is only entitled to a designated number of contacts.
At some campuses, that's correct. At other campuses, there is more flexibility in the number of contacts. So that varies campus to campus. But to the heart of your question is if someone is uninsured or underinsured, what the process is that we will, the counseling staff will work with the student to find, on two fronts, to find services that either do not require insurance or can be worked on a sliding fee scale, or can make other arrangements. And the other opportunity is that we have a relationship with the Office of City Access program through HRA to work with the students to determine if their insurance could be improved if they switch to another provider or switch to another program to access. So those are the options that we go. There are services available that do not require insurance, so we will often utilize those as well.
Thank you. Some other questions that you can send to us in terms of data. We would like to know the number of students that CUNY has referred to mental health, such as through Thrive and NYC Well, and do we have any data on the percentage of students that are referred to H&H as compared to other referrals that you give? And I have to ask the question about CUNY's imposition of this $120 health and wellness fee, which was approved by the Board of Trustees. I don't think it's been implemented as yet, but the Board of Trustees approved an additional $120 health and wellness fee per student per academic year. Is there any indication that that money can be put in fact to the needs of the health and wellness? Of course, I have to state my position is that I don't think it should be implemented at all. But since it has been approved by the Board of Trustees, what are the plans? And we're hoping that in fact it does not become implemented, but what are the plans for that money?
As I understand things, it is a part of the proposed budget.
Right.
And the Board of Trustees has not yet voted on that budget. So without a vote on the budget, there's no final decision about that fee. Okay. And right now, the $5 million that is in position through the CARES Act money is keeping us from having to do that for this year. So we're using that money as best we can. And so that's why we provided that information, and it's included. The list of those services is included in my testimony, I know, but we can get you additional information about how we are using that money this year.
Thank you so much. You've been patient. You've been responsive. We do have additional questions, which we will put in writing to you and ask that you respond. And once again, I want to welcome Dr. Maybank to CUNY and in the new capacity, and to the other panelists, Dr. Bryant and Mr. Kamir. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Barron. That concludes the public's testimony, the administration's testimony, forgive me. Now that we have concluded the administration's testimony, we will now turn to our next panel. Before we do that, I'd like to remind everyone that individuals will be called up in panels. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the raise hand function in Zoom. You will be called on after everyone on that panel has completed their testimony. For panelists, once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you, and the Sergeant at Arms will give you the go-ahead to begin after setting a timer. All testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. Please wait for the Sergeant to announce that you may begin your testimony before starting. So the next panel, in order of speaking, will be Abigail Rojas, Diana Valenzuela, and Ashley Huerta. Ms. Rojas, you may begin your testimony.
Starting time.
We can't hear you. Are you on mute, Ms. Rojas?
Okay, we can come back to Ms. Rojas. If Ms. Valenzuela is ready, you may begin your testimony.
Starting time.
Good afternoon. My name is Diana Valenzuela, and I am a sophomore at Bronx Community College studying political science. I want to thank the New York City Council for the opportunity to testify at today's hearing. As a student currently attending counseling sessions, I believe that there is room for improvement in the way that mental health services are administered. Personal counseling has helped with the anxiety that I am experiencing. However, I think that there are some ideas that students will benefit from if implemented. In my case, it was not difficult to access the benefits. However, the sessions at times feel like we're going more through like a scripted dialogue instead of addressing my stressors one by one so that I may effectively eliminate them. To a certain extent, these counseling sessions are failing to address the circumstances during a regular semester do not compare to what we are currently experiencing. Midterms are not the only cause of stress. Rather, eviction or the fear of potentially contracting a deadly virus by simply going grocery shopping is what's elevating students' anxiety. While speaking with others who have sought counseling, I've noticed that their experience is more discouraging than mine. Due to COVID, more students are seeking counseling, and many have pointed out that CUNY mental health services are severely understaffed, which leaves students on their own when navigating their mental health, undoubtedly taking a toll on students' health and their academic career. My recommendations for CUNY to improve mental health services would be more referrals to departments better suited to address the issues identified during the sessions, such as loss of income or food insecurity, by providing information about food pantries and emergency grants, better collaboration between departments that provide aid, such as Single Stop, which would deliver more structured sessions with counselors that are trained beyond counseling. Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, we would benefit more from personalized experiences based on our unique needs. Sessions should be more goal-oriented with tangible solutions that address the circumstances that are causing the stress. CUNY should increase the diversity in counseling services because through research, I've found out that the lack of equal representation discourages students from seeking help. More research into the way that students are coping with COVID is necessary to give our respective institutions better insight into how to properly serve their students. Furthermore, I urge CUNY and the council to acknowledge these unprecedented circumstances that we are facing when establishing grading policies and academic standards. When students are expected to adjust to the changes that the institution has made, while not only paying full tuition, but also maintaining our grades, it takes a toll on our mental health, which inevitably affects our academic performance. Thank you again for the opportunity to share my story and recommendations.
Thank you. Before I announce the next panelists, I'll just note that we've been joined by Dimalatu Berry, who will also join this panel. However, we'll first go back to Ms. Rojas. If she's ready to testify, you may begin now.
Starting time.
Hi, I'm just having a difficulty. I felt like I was ready to do so, but I feel a little too anxious, and I just wanted to express that, and I'm sorry for not being able to do so.
Well, thank you for your interest in our topic. And if at some point you want to submit something in writing, we would certainly be pleased to have that.
Thank you, Ms. Rojas. Our next panelist will be Ashley Huerta.
Starting time.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Huerta, and I am a senior at Lehman College studying English and Political Science. I want to thank the New York City Council for the opportunity to testify at today's hearing. Today, I'm highlighting the story of Alo, a 20-year-old average college student that commutes to school, works a part-time job, and goes back home to fulfill her duties as an older sibling every day. Like many college students, students like Alo and I are constantly running back and forth between our responsibilities without asking, am I taking care of myself? We only realize how far we have taken ourselves until our battery runs out. As a natural response, Alo reached out to Lehman College's mental health resources for a hand. What started as I need help quickly flipped to I will deal with my problems myself when Alo realized the limited availability of the mental health resources on campus. The counseling center was booked, the hour availability was not enough, and the center's Saturday hours were very limited, not open past 2. It became clear that limited mental health resources feels like a closed door when you most need a hand. Alo is not alone. A 2018 Healthy CUNY survey of CUNY Community College and four-year students found an estimated of 40,329 undergraduates report symptoms of depression, 47,662 report symptoms of anxiety disorder, and 40,818 for symptoms associated with moderate or severe psychological distress. That is, 1 in 6 CUNY undergraduates experience depression, 1 in 5 experience anxiety disorders, and 1 in 6 show signs of moderate to severe psychological distress. For students with household incomes lower than $30,000 a year, they report higher levels of 3 conditions than their peers living in households with higher incomes. When our mental health is not appropriately treated, it becomes a barrier to our learning and overall a success as a student. I'm asking the city to invest in the visibility, accessibility, and expansion of our mental health resources here at CUNY. I'm asking for an increase in licensed full-time mental health counselors at each CUNY campus. CUNY should aim to have 1 counselor for every 1,000 students as recommended by the International Accreditation of Counseling Services. Currently, that ratio at CUNY is 1 counselor for every 2,400 students. I'm asking for an increase in accessibility for mental health resources beyond the current school hours. Mental health counseling must extend to accommodate students who take classes at night and during the weekend. My final recommendation is to prepare students to serve as mental health advocates to increase the visibility of mental health resources and to destigmatize experiencing mental health struggles. Limited access to mental health resources is a crisis, and our most vulnerable students are at risk. We must take action now. Thank you.
Thank you. The last panelist will be Dimilatu Barry.
Starting time.
Ms. Barry, if you're available, have you turned on your microphone? We can't hear you.
Maybe we can begin council members' questions. Oh, we hear you.
Okay. Okay. Can I start now?
Yes, please. You may begin.
Yep, starting time.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diamila Tribari. I'm a senior student at Hunter College studying computer science and psychology. I would like to thank the New York City Council for the opportunity to testify at today's hearing. Mental health issues such as depression and anxiety are barriers to academic success for some college students at CUNY. Depression and anxiety can lead to academic failure. According to the 2000 Healthy CUNY survey of representative sample, approximately 40,329 undergrad students report symptoms of depression. 47,662 report symptoms of anxiety disorder, and 40,818 report symptoms associated with minor and severe psychological distress. Although the rate of student mental health is higher in campus, the number of mental health counselors available in each campus is low. Currently, CUNY student to counselor ratio of 2,400 students per counselor is well above the recommended level. In my own experience, I have had both depression and anxiety for many years. Unfortunately, I could not see a mental health counselor in my campus for the last 4 months due to lack of information about how to access those services in campus. So I have been struggling with those since 2016. A few weeks ago, I started seeing a mental health counselor at Hunter College, but she referred me to mental health of campus. She referred me to off-campus services. I believe that there should be more professional mental health counselor available to CUNY students, and it should be advertised better. I also believe that it would be more helpful if individual appointments are being extended. I think all the following strategy would increase the access of mental health services for CUNY students, such as hiring more professional mental health counselors, training students to serve as a healthy peer advocate, training faculty to give accurate and brief information about the access of mental health services in college, hiring more mental health services of color and LGBTQ mental health counselor, hiring specialist mental health counselor with disability, and extending virtual mental health
Time expired.
services beyond the pandemic. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. That concludes testimony for this panel. We will now turn to Chair Barron for questions.
I want to thank the panelists. It's always, to me, most appropriate to have those who are directly impacted by the topic that we're discussing today to present and share their personal experiences. I support all that you've said. I appreciate the specific recommendations for CUNY to consider as they address ways to respond to this issue. And I want to thank you all for sharing your testimony. Chair Ayala, do you have any comments or questions?
I just wanted to thank all of the panelists for coming today and speaking truth to, to the current situation at CUNY and throughout the city. And I think I very much sympathize as a former CUNY student who was, trying to raise a family, living on a very, very, very fixed income. I really understand the complexities and how all of these other influences really affect a person's mental health and their ability to really dedicate themselves to their studies. So I'm, just really proud of all of you for coming today and having the courage to speak before us and on behalf of all of your peers. And I hope that this hearing actually translates into better services for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to ask if there are any council members present who have questions. Please use the Zoom raise hand function. Seeing none, we've concluded this panel, and I'll introduce the next panel. Next up will be Barbara Bowen, President, PSC, and Pedro Luna, SEEK Program Counselor. Ms. Bowen, you may begin your testimony.
Starting time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chairs Barron and Ayala, for holding this joint hearing and for raising such an important topic. And I also just wanted to say that I applaud the courage of the students who've spoken about their own challenges with mental health in some cases today. I know that takes tremendous courage, so thank you. And Chair Barron, you spoke at the beginning about racism in medicine. I think one thing that's worth reflecting on is the very sordid history of why we don't have universal health care in this country. And it has a lot to do with racism. There's so much important research showing that connection about why the US does not have universal health care. Because of course, if we did have that, some of these problems would not be present. The issues that I want to highlight really boil down to just a few. One is that the needs for mental health services at CUNY are unusually high compared to colleges across the country, given the stresses that our students already faced even before COVID, poverty, racism, extreme stressors that they are, and then the unemployment, 41% unemployment in the Bronx, the unemployment, the grief, the loss, the stress of being an essential worker. So we already have a situation where the needs are unusually high before COVID. Then since COVID, those needs have been multiplied. And yet the services at CUNY are appallingly low. The services were low before the pandemic, and now with an increased need, there's even more pressure on those services. And it's a structural problem. I mean, it's good to have $5 million sent to it. It sounds like they may not be instituting the wellness fee this year, but $5 million is a one-time amount, and it's not going to solve the problem. It's really, and you've heard me talk about this before, it's an issue of investment and an issue of political priorities. Does the mental health of CUNY students matter? Does it matter? If it does, it has to be invested in. So the PSC was interested to hear the figures today. It's really a ratio of 1 to about 2,600 mental health, counselor to mental health provider students at CUNY. I don't know which campus has 1 to 6,000, but that is really shocking. The national accreditation ratio that's recommended is between 1 to 1,500 and 1 to 1,000. And the PSC is actually proposing legislation in Albany, a new deal for CUNY that would bring that number up to the right number. And we estimate that the cost would be $15 million for 125 new mental health counseling positions. And it's important that, and this come up earlier, it's important that that include people trained in as clinicians,
Time expired.
social workers. Thank you. There's more to say.
Please continue. Please
okay,
continue.
Thank you very much. I'll make it quick. I also just wanted to say that at this moment, CUNY students for the past several months not only are going through the trauma of COVID in very particular and intense ways, but also many of them are recalling their personal traumas of police violence and racism, and many students, white, Black, Latino, other students, Asian students, are taking risks to defend Black lives. And these, this courage and these risks and this remembered trauma and absorbing the trauma that we see around us also takes a mental health toll. So I think we need to factor in all of that, but the underlying issue is that the structures are not there. When we have 1 to 2,600 instead of 1 to 1,000, no matter how dedicated, and you'll hear in a minute from my colleague Pedro Luna, incredibly dedicated counselor, no matter how wonderful and dedicated those counselors are, if they are working at 3 times the number of students they should be seeing, that means they cannot serve students as well as they want to and as they are trained to do. We simply need to demand the funding from Albany, the new revenue through taxation, the funding from the city to make an investment and prioritize this health. And I'll just mention one thing in closing. CUNY, as you know, also has graduate employees. And in the last contract, we bargained for additional money and succeeded in putting aside money for extending the graduate employee health insurance for students who don't have it currently. CUNY is still blocking negotiations on that. The money is sitting there. We have not been able to negotiate that. And that means hundreds of graduate employees who are teaching these students are not getting health insurance that we have paid for in a pandemic. So I urge you to, those here from CUNY, to also make that a priority, because that of course includes mental as well as physical health. So thank you very much, chairs and council members. Thank you.
Thank you. The next panelist will be Pedro Luna.
Starting time.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Pedro Luna. I'm a SEEK counselor. I work for this SEEK program at Lehman College. And I just wanted to just give you a little brief of what my experience has been collaborating with the Counseling Center. We serve about 900 students in the SEEK program, and we support them academically. And when they face mental health issue, we refer them to the counseling center. We work very closely with them. And my experience is that they have been very responsive, especially when we do the referral. And I agree with everybody in here who mentioned that definitely the student ratio is very high. So it's very hard for them to give the attention that they need. But the qualification of the counselor that I believe as a counselor, they are very highly qualified. And I mean, in the last 6 years, I've been working as CUNY for the 12 years. I've been part of the hiring committee for many of those counselors, and we just hire the best, But I think the issue is the student ratio, and I think the counselors don't have time to follow up with the students, because every day their schedule is packed, and we only have 35 hours as heroes to work, so it's limited. So I just wanted to give some suggestions real quick before I wrote down that when we look at mental health, we have to move beyond what mental health how it has been defined. I think we need to look at mental health as more as a community-based mental health where everybody is part of this. So, so in addition to reducing the student ratio, 1 to 3,000, 1 to 1,500 students, 1 to 1,000, that would be great. I think we need to make sure that we have professors, that the ratio in the classroom is low as well, because professors play a key role. So we have to watch the student ratio of students in the classroom. We also had to work with community organizations, making sure that they are strong, because so we need to invest in them, and because it's not just our students, our family members also they are facing. Some of them they lost their job, so we want to make sure that we have vocational opportunity for them as well. And so when you're facing anxiety, you are facing issues because you're anxious because you're real. You either you don't have a job, you're hungry, you don't have anything. Of course you're gonna be anxious. But if you don't meet those needs, no matter what we do, it's not gonna be fixed. So we need some financial resources in the community and within CUNY. And finally, I would say let's work with insurance companies. Zero co-pays for CUNY students when they go to mental health. Zero co-pays. So let's do that now. We're in a crisis.
I'm expired.
Have you finished, Mr.?
Have you finished? Almost. Let me see. So yeah, let me elaborate a little quick. I think that we need to put some money that if we can hire other counselors at CUNY, CUNY is the NGO Economic Mobility, not a perfect institution. And we know that, it's a great institution. We serve 272,000 students, 77% of them students of color. The Bronx, the high hit for COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that even in terms of death, 117% of Latino and Black, Latino, Latinx are higher than the other groups in terms of death from COVID-19. So we need to treat this as a pandemic, and we need a community base. We need to work with employers. We need to give student jobs, zero co-pay, and the whole community. But CUNY cannot do it by himself. Mm-hmm. We need a whole holistic approach. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank this panel for coming and for sharing their testimony. And we certainly know that those persons who are on the front line are the ones that we're looking to make sure that we can get the kinds of programs in place that will bring us the result that we need. We know that this is a time of, statistics have shown that the ages from 18 to 25 are critical in human development. And while we certainly don't have a traditional, traditional student in this day and age, still there's quite a large number of students in that age group that are part of the CUNY student population. And it's a critical time, and as they're going through these developmental stages and being at CUNY, they're also adding on those feelings of anxiety and stress and trauma, the exhaustion just of dealing with moving back and forth in an era of being able to have to wear a mask and perhaps take public transportation to go to their jobs if they're able to have those, the anxiety, the sadness, the feeling of loneliness, but perhaps compounding all of that is that sense of hopelessness. Well, what's in it? Where's the light at the end of the tunnel? And that to me is one of the great contributing factors to students who are experiencing these levels of stress. So we've got to make sure that we do our part. This is a golden opportunity for CUNY to step up. CUNY's got to step up. If we say that our society as it exists has got to address those issues of mental health and provide those kinds of services, CUNY has got to step up. And bottom line, it's going to take money. We can have all of the grandiose plans and talk about how we can address this and what we're going to do and how we're going to coordinate. The bottom line is it's going to take money. And we want to make sure that that is reflected in the budgets going forward. We've got to tax the rich. We've got to be able to have those persons who are making multiple millions of dollars contribute and share the burden of providing education, post-secondary education. And of course, you know, my position is always that I went to CUNY because I had a B average, graduated from a public high school in the city and was entitled to go. We need to come back to that, particularly in this day when a secondary education is not enough to move us through the times that we have. My co-chair, Diana Ayala.
You said it also eloquently. I have nothing further to add, but thank you all for coming today.
Okay, so Council Member, do you have any closing comments that you want to make? This is the last panel. I think the council will make sure that there aren't any members that we've overlooked.
Correct. At this point, I'd like to ask if there are any council members present who have a question. Please use the Zoom raise hand function. Seeing none, that concludes public testimony. However, if we inadvertently missed anyone that would like to testify, please use the Zoom raise hand function and we will call on you when you do so. Seeing no hands, we have concluded testimony for today.
Thank you. I just want to say, I want to thank all of the panelists, PSC for their presentation. They always bring that dimension of those who are involved in a very face-to-face, even though it's virtual right now, interaction with the students that are there. I want to also thank CUNY. As always, they don't just testify and leave. They do stay so that they can hear all of the testimony and use that as a part of drafting a response to the issues that we have addressed. And certainly to the students, because you're the ones that are experiencing this firsthand and are able to share with us what we need to focus on from your levels. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank my co-chair, Councilmember Diana Ayala, for her sharing this very important topic. Look forward to having other joint hearings with you as well. And if there are no further, Councilmember, do you want to say something? Ayala, Councilmember Ayala? No? Okay. So if there are no further comments, I have to thank those behind the camera, behind the scene. I was so challenged and flustered this morning trying to juggle everything and figuring out, well, how can I get the script on the screen? How can I get all that information on the right tile and still be able to see? But we made it through with your great help. I want to also thank particularly my council and the higher ed staff, all of you who work with me, and also to Indigo Washington. It was a challenge today. This is not the first, but this one was the most challenging, but we got through it and I think we delivered it well. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you all. And with that, this hearing is adjourned.